This is a true story. In the summer of 1984, I was about 1 year old. My mother took me to the first Democratic Socialists of America convention in Burlington, Vermont. All the big-name socialists were there. Cornel West, Larry Website, the Austin Cop, Larry Craig. It was a who's who of all the men leading the fight against capitalism. The keynote speaker that year was a young socialist mayor named Bernie Sanders. I was sitting in the back in the women's section on my mother's lap, sweating in her arms as it was unseasonably hot that summer, which must have felt to her like cradling a raw turkey. Bernie came out from backstage to a wild ovation as all the men wanted to commend him for his work defeating the Equal Rights Amendment. Bernie slithered to the dais, hunched over, wringing his hands menacingly in that way he always walks. I want to thank the men for having me here today, thank the women for their reverent silence, and thank the people of color for not being visible, except for you, of course, Uncle West. Then Bernie moved into his stump speech, which really hasn't changed at all in the past 40-odd years. Let me be clear. Class is the only thing that exists, and everything else is fakakta. If racism and gender are real, then I give them 15 minutes to knock me off this platform. The crowd was lapping it up, but perhaps because of the heat, I was particularly colicky that day, and I let out a piercing wail. My mother desperately tried to mollify me, but the sound attracted the attention of Bernie, who immediately launched into a salvo of misogynist hand gestures in my mother's direction. If nobody shuts that Meshuggah baby up, I will drain him of his blood and save it as a beverage for my next Passover Seder. My mother was a very amiable person in those years, having joined a socialist organization to impress boys, of course, but this was her last straw. She deposited me in the arms of Francis Fox Piven, stood up, and returned fire. Mr. Sanders, socialism is supposed to be about quality and having fun with your friends. But how is it equality when women are expected to wear chastity bonnets and take care of the children while the men get to go off to coke parties in Brooklyn and take their shirts off with each other? Well, Mr. Sanders, you call yourself a socialist, but do you redistribute the millions of dollars you make selling your typewritten newsletter full of pornographic short stories? No, hold on a minute. That is not the case. So how dare you quote Pat Benatar when you stand for none of her values? You might think you're a real tough cookie, sir, but this is one little heart you will not break. My mother dropped the mic to overwhelming tears and applause. Bernie pleaded with the crowd for order, but it was too late. They all booed him and took off their DSA pins and put on Geraldine Ferraro buttons. Bernie slunk off the stage back to one of his two houses, soliloquizing, "What a shanda! My plan to silence every woman in the country has been delayed yet again. Now I must wait 30 years for podcasts to be invented." So that's the story of how one baby stood up to the most evil man in American history. And that colicky baby's name was Peter Dow.
Hello, everybody. We are back. It's your Chapo for this week. We've got a full house because we've got a full book report incoming for you. This week, we are going to be talking about former FBI Director James Comey and A Higher Loyalty. Honor, duty, respect, more honor and loyalty. My Years in the White House by James Comey. Matt and I have, I won't say read this book, but certainly skimmed enough of it to mine some nuggets.
I'd say that I gave it a good perusal.
So, the former FBI director has a lot of things to say and a lot of things to teach about ethical leadership, whether you are in business, government, or podcasting.
He really is Mr. Too Damn Ethical.
And hopefully we will share now some of those lessons with you guys and with my co-hosts who are eager to learn about leadership and challenges to that. But before we get much further, I have to introduce our guest for this week. Joining us is Catherine Krieger of Splinter, a returning champion.
Hey, hello.
Have you ever met the Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, we go way back. I've never heard that one before.
Really?
Welcome to the comedy hour.
Riff City, exit now. Catherine is here, of course, because you earlier this week reported on the great man himself, James Comey, our tall, handsome defender of truth and justice against our terrible president. You attended a big book launch event and signing with him at the Union Square Barnes & Noble earlier this week.
Hell on earth. Yeah, absolutely excruciating. Spent 14 hours in pursuit of the big man himself.
All worth it, though.
Well, yeah, we're one now. Our minds have melded.
Yes, I think you have achieved a certain kind of symbiosis or on the same wavelength. You made eye contact with him, and I think you
repeatedly in a sustained way. I wouldn't let him look away.
Could you tell us a little bit about the scene at Barnes & Noble earlier this week and the people who turned out to see James Comey?
Yeah, so people were waiting outside. You had to wait in line starting at 6 a.m., not only to get a wristband for the event, but people I was standing in line with were deeply obsessed with the idea of getting a signed James Comey book. So there were people in line who, were just huge James Comey fans and huge Hillary fans.
What did they look like?
It was surprisingly diverse.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised. But the ages skewed older, right?
Yeah.
It was definitely, it's 7 a.m. Who doesn't have to go to work? It was kind of retired people.
Right.
But then at the actual event, it was very much people of all ages. It was a fucking campaign poster.
One of the interesting things you mentioned about the people waiting online, deadheads or whatever, trying to get concert tickets.
Yeah, it was like Fish.
Yeah. You said there were, fans of the FBI, there were fans of Hillary Clinton, but you spoke to one gentleman who was, I think, representative of a certain demographic represented there, who are people who are just fans of signed books by famous people.
Yeah, he just kept going on and on about unprompted, I'm really a huge fan, I like history, but I'm a huge fan of people who have actually, and the famous person has actually touched the book. I want, James Comey's hands oils having touched this book. And then when I got my signed book, which I ended up feeling like I was taking away from a more worthy person, he had signed on a sticker. So I was very concerned about my
I'd say with that guy, the least weird thing would be is if he's trying to clone all of these famous people and he needs the DNA. And that's because otherwise it's just sad.
Right.
So when everyone finally got their passes and to go in later for the event that evening, what was it like? What was Comey like? When he finally strode out there, all 6'7" of him.
Oh man, 6'8" actually.
Ooh, okay, listed at 6'8".
He's just a man who radiates dignity and ethical leadership. And I felt like just being in the room with him, I was becoming a better person. I might look into working for the CIA. I really want to serve my country now.
You said there was one person there who had an FBI T-shirt.
She had a homemade FBI shirt. Which
Okay,
was
but was she a female body inspector?
we'll never know. We'll never know. But it was the back of the shirt was this was clearly a one of one run, with a line from James Comey's resignation letter. It was just aggressive normies on the march. It was I ended up feeling deeply demoralized and deeply disturbed. I needed a drink desperately at the end of this ordeal.
You know what? Fuck that person. FBI is okay, but it's no Bureau of Land Management. That is the number one agency in the federal government, and I could say fuck off to anybody else talking about any of these other stupid agencies.
I'm the guy who thinks that BLM stands for Bureau of Land Management, and I'm like, damn, people really love grazing rights.
Bureau of Land Management only had 10,000 fans, but they all went on to start their own federal departments.
God.
So what was the crowd's reaction to Comey? Did he get a big applause?
Oh my God. They
Cummings
greeted
for
him
Comey.
like a fucking rock star. It was like Mick Jagger was in the building or something. There was just people were buzzing for him. And then we're just beaming and adoring and giving him a standing ovation. And then there were a couple disturbances during the events, one of whom was, Laurel Loomer, but the other one seemed legit. And people shouted.
She was demanding to know about her tires and why the FBI hadn't looked into that.
And these audience members were booing the protesters because they were please don't interrupt our beautiful boy.
Before I go deeper in the book, Catherine, what were his actual remarks to the crowd like? And what was, and then could you give us a flavor of what some of the questions he faced from the audience?
Yeah, like his little presentation was actually pretty short. Like it was mostly questions and answers. And the bulk of his talk was just him relaying this lengthy anecdote in the book, which clearly like this was the singular experience in shaping the man he is today, about like working as a stockroom boy. And like, the manager, he broke the pricey gun, and like the manager,
he breaks the price gun.
well,
I
this
remember
manager
anecdote.
teaches him that like you have to be humble and you have to love your employees. Like really harps on like love your boss, love your employees,
Oh,
which
boy.
is really weird.
What
And then-
is his relationship with his father? Because
His father,
really loved this manager.
James Comey.
yeah, he really likes the manager.
James
Yeah.
Comey's father was a store display of Brill cream stuffed into a cheap suit with a gun attached to it.
I feel like it was Cotton Hill.
Yeah.
He seems like a guy who had a happy childhood, though.
James Comey.
did have
James
a
Comey's dad was a judge advocate corps who court-martialed the people who bombed Dresden for not hitting enough civilians.
I don't think his dad is like that. He does in the book of what he does talk about his family. It seems like he had a normal, happy, middle class family life, except for one incident that we're going to get
Oh,
to.
boy.
That actually is fairly harrowing.
Yikes. Yeah.
Then I've not read about any of this
Well,
in the pre-press, but
Everyone's got that one uncle who hugs you for too long, and then you're like, I
Felix-
have to punish all 11-year-olds
Felix, you're
now,
not far off,
especially
dude.
Muslims.
no.
you're not far off. We'll get
Yeah,
there.
it's pretty intense.
But what were some like? So he tells a long anecdote about working as a stock room boy, which I'm sure everyone there really came to hear his thoughts on.
Yeah.
As a grocery, well, that people were beaming. They loved this shit. They actually did.
That's such boomer shit. They talk about like the one difficult job they had in 1968.
When they were 14, and
Yeah.
like that was
Yeah.
so admirable. They learned how to work hard, and
And-
I
kids
had
these
6
days
weekends
don't
as a
do that
proletarian,
anymore.
And now I'm noble.
And they
Yeah.
got paid the equivalent of $75,000 a year now. And
He
they're like,
could buy a house at 19.
yeah.
And then he went into these pre-screened questions. Mine did not get asked about. Literally, the first question was, and I'm paraphrasing here: "Is writing a book hard?" And he was like, "Oh boy, yeah."
Was
That's
Chris Farley interviewing him?
That must have
when
been
you
a
were in the
plan.
when you were in the FBI, what was your favorite lunch to get?
That must have been a plant, though, right?
I mean,
no,
they
he-
were
they got
all
to pick
Wait,
the
did
question.
anyone there
softball.
look paid to make the thing go well? This just strikes me as very Lisa Goes to Washington.
I mean, the whole thing were plants, right? They were just like he was pitching to the home crowd.
Yeah,
is
they
that,
were-
is
they
that
were
the right
planted
sports
themselves.
metaphor? I don't know.
I just don't want to believe that those people exist organically.
I was the
they're
infidel
there.
in the room, but like I have never encountered that many of those like aggressively norm
Wait a sec.
libs in one space.
I've done
before.
Catherine, you were not the only infidel in the room. Laura Loomer was also
Don't
there.
group me with her. Don't. Yeah.
The correct term
I relate to her.
the correct term is Reformed Jew, by the way.
So Laura Loomer was escorted out.
Yeah.
And you had a brief video of this that you posted on Twitter from the room, and it was sort of unclear what was going on. But my favorite part about it is throughout the entire video, there's just an old man behind you throughout this entire time, just going, "No, no, no,"
Louder and louder.
and in an increasingly distressed way.
And yeah, that's why I say like people were really upset that he had been interrupted. Like,
How
not
dare
even that,
you,
and they didn't even
sir.
know that it was like a shitbag like Project Veritas person. They were just like, "How dare you? We're here to honor a good man."
How did Comey react to getting heckled?
To getting
You know?
loomered.
He looked just, I mean, it really went on for a long time. So he kind of stood there with like a pleasant look plastered on his face. And then, it was lasted almost like 5 minutes. And then he started to look just like a little awkward because, this man loves rules and someone was
5
breaking the rules in an
minutes?
indoor
5
space.
minutes.
What was she yelling about?
It was like really hard to tell because people were drowning her out. And the private security was like not that good because they took a really long time to get her out.
Ma'am.
Folks, you heard it here from Catherine Krieger. James Comey, private security, not that great.
When Comey
He's
gets
a soft target.
ma'am, stop interrupting the show. I don't come to your work and smack the dishonor out of your mouth.
Now I remember what Laura was on about. She was like, well, how is it ethical leadership to brief the president-elect on an unverified dossier? It was like about the Steele
Yeah.
dossier.
PK.
That was all I caught.
Well, he's like, as he says in this book, how as director of the FBI would I not bring it to the president's attention that he may be blackmailed by the Russian government?
Yeah, he was actually doing his job.
The worst, I mean, I don't know. How could you do that? Bring unverified information to Donald Trump. No one does that to him. No one just goes up to him and says, they've turned Grimace Muslim now. Can you believe this? It never happens. It's not, literally everyone around him just lies to him constantly. And he's a confused baby.
He actually thinks that he is 6'3", 239 pounds.
So he must think James Comey is like 9 feet. Then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did anyone ask about the fucking letter that handed the presidency to Donald Trump, according to Hillary Clinton?
I mean, the closest they got to that was someone kind of asking like, so what do you regret about 2016? And long answer short, it was basically like, not too much. He basically said like, oh, I wish I had had the chance to explain myself better.
Yes.
Even though I feel like he did get to
That's all he
explain
did.
himself. And, he kind of relied on this line about like, I was faced with bad and worse options. And so as the man of honor, I just had to choose bad. And, what would you have done?
It's amazing because if Hillary had won, which easily could have happened, she probably would have canned him by now because the Clintons are
Of
so
course.
psychopathically obsessed with loyalty, just the way that Trump is,
Right.
and they would not have had a guy that was that unreliable at justice, and then he would have become a mega hero, and he would be doing this literal exact same book tour. The book would probably have a different title. It would be like, Raped by Clinton Liberalism or something. There'd be flames on it, and it would have a foreword by Ted Nugent, but he would be doing the same fucking tour in front of MAGA chuds, and they'd be baying and hooting like fucking animals with how much they loved him.
And Laura Loomer would be the warm-up act.
Yeah, astounding.
Well, you said as you left, there were some chuds. There was a counter protest outside the book signing of people being with signs that were like, "Comey, you're going to jail."
Yeah, people with very deep interior lives.
This started around like 2009 when Obama like really cracked their brains that they just now think that anyone they don't like will go to prison. If
If they protest hard enough.
yeah.
No, that's true. That's the QAnon basically is every lib you don't like on TV, he's going to be in Gitmo for child molestation within 6
Any
weeks.
day now,
Any
yeah.
day.
Wasn't sort of the main message that Comey delivered in his remarks and what he says that he's trying to do in this book is like, hey, we need to get beyond like all of our yelling at each other and name calling and the spiteful petty things about our democracy and focus on that which it embiggens all of our spirits, which is honor, loyalty, and service. And
My eyes are just like glazing over. I mean, yeah, I haven't read the book, but I feel like watching his interviews and going to this event, I have a pretty good feel for it. And like once you get past his ties are too long, there's nothing interesting or new there. It's actually like advocating this return to all American civility, or we just have to hold close to our shared values, and we can survive this dark 8 years.
I mean, one of the things that we met, Matt, maybe you'll disagree with me. Like he does come in the book, he really does come across as a guy who really loves rules.
Oh,
And he's like a
loves
real
rules.
stickler for the rules. And I think like probably like in his mind, like he does present himself in a sense that I thought was credible as someone who really does believe in the role of the FBI as a kind of neutral law enforcement agency, and that
big time.
that their only job is essentially to comment on the legality of things, be it at the NSA spying program or the torture of POWs.
They police the police. It's a
Yeah.
great system.
They watch The Watchmen.
And that like he and that he really, I think, regards himself as someone who is not ideological, but as the cliche goes, I call balls and strikes. Like that's what I do in the FBI. And that Trump's real problem with him is that he wouldn't commit to being loyal to an administration
Because he had a higher loyalty.
and not the higher loyalty, of course, is to the law and America. And whether you think that's credible about Comey or not, the way he writes about how he feels about it, it certainly seems that that's what he
No,
thinks.
he seems very genuine, which is what makes it so depressing because you have this just shiny-eyed zealot for this fantasy vision of America who went through all of this stuff. He talks about all of his stints in the U.S. Attorney's Office, working for the Clintons and for George W. and then for Trump and Obama. And he comes out of the other end of this just meat grinder where he sees that all of these ideas of independent agencies and things being uncorrupted by politics is a total fantasy. And his resulting thought is all of these people should have read The Kill a Mockingbird. Like he genuinely just thinks these people are just, they don't understand what these values are. And if they understood the values, then everything would be better. Not that, the structural reality of these institutions necessitate that politics is inextricable from the execution of the agencies. Nope. It's that it's the most liberal shit on earth, basically.
I do think that one of the reasons people gravitate toward him is because he is utterly guileless.
Oh, absolutely.
He lacks even a streak of cynicism. He is a true believer. And
No,
I think
he is. He
people
is a
sense
Boy
that.
Scout.
He's
He
emerged.
absolutely
He's
is.
emerged without disenchantment, which I think would make him more credible.
Yeah.
But
It just makes him sad, in my opinion.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's utterly,
deeply
it's utterly
depressing.
pathetic,
right.
but it's like
you've seen the
yeah.
sausage being made at the highest levels,
like,
and
you're a
you're still a
grown-ass
process
man.
truster.
How many mixtapes do you think he bought on the subway on the way to that reading? Oh, I got to pay for this? Well, okay, if your signature's on it.
The Take a Penny jar says a penny, no more than that.
Well, let me read now from the author's note to the book. And I think this pretty much sums up, how he sees himself and his mission now in public life. Comey writes here, I spent a lot of time thinking about the title of the book. That's a good idea as an author myself now. Definitely, you want to spend a lot of the title's the most important thing.
That's the first thing they read.
Yeah. In one sense, it came out of a bizarre dinner meeting at the White House where a new president of the United States demanded my loyalty to him, personally, over my duties as FBI director to the American people. But in another deeper sense, the title is the culmination of 4 decades in law as a federal prosecutor, business lawyer, and working closely with 3 U.S. presidents. In all those jobs, I learned from those around me and tried to pass on to those I worked with that there is a higher loyalty in all of our lives. Not to a person, not to a party, not to a group. The higher loyalty is to lasting values. Most important, the truth.
Damn, dude, I'm glad that you got paid $3.8 million for your LinkedIn About Me page. You fucking tall, dumb shit. No, yeah, I mean, guileless is the way to describe this guy because
He's an incorruptible hall monitor.
Well, he is a deeply evil person because he's spent like the plurality of his life just locking people in fucking cages because I don't know, they
Including Martha Stewart, by the way.
Yeah.
He put her away.
Ethics without morals.
Yeah, exactly. But just as a person, he's a bumbling oaf dipshit who's one of these people who can't let go of being an Eagle Scout when they're 12 because they think it's the most significant thing that ever happened, and they think that they are Braveheart because their hearts swell with joy when they go to see the Astros play the Orioles and they hear they see a fucking Korean War veteran hobble out there and go, "It's good to be proud of your country," and they think that they're knights on a valiant quest, as Dan Quinn says. Anyway, as we go deeper into this book that I haven't read, just the little bits and pieces I get about James Comey along the way, I hope that he walks into a ceremonial sword display and beheads himself.
Getting into the book now, the first thing I want to talk about that I noticed about this book are the epigraphs.
Oh, God.
Every chapter begins with an epigraph, and the introduction begins with Reinhold, the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr.
He
And I
got
wanna talk
such a
about
Niebuhr boner.
He's quoting Reinhard Heydrich? Unbelievable.
the other epigraphs. This is just a selection. Every chapter has one. But the epigraphs in this book run the gamut from Niebuhr to Hermann Hesse to Eisenhower to Michael Corleone from The Godfather, the movie character.
Hell yeah.
Mark Twain and Sammy the Bull Gravano. So he literally quotes Michael Corleone being the line where he says, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
James Comey is one of those guys who every time he goes to a restaurant with cloth napkins and has a tie on, he's like, mob boss shit. I'm in the mafia, dog.
There is quite a bit about the mob.
I
in the
could
early
definitely see
chapters
him
of this
as
book.
Sterling Hayden just gormlessly chewing on veal parmesan before getting fucking domed with a pistol.
Yeah, but he's meeting with Michael Corleone to give him his book pitch. Yeah. He didn't even want to hit him. He's just like, this is so boring. Is there a gun anywhere?
The opening epigraph in the introduction from Reinhold Niebuhr is, man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but man's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary.
Damn, so true.
Good to be good.
Well, he does love Niebuhr, and remember he had a Twitter account that was at Niebuhr,
Yep.
and then people were speculating that it was James Comey, and then it turned out that it was.
Yeah.
Shout out Ashley Feinberg.
Yeah, she did. She did that detective work.
So he loves Niebuhr, and I think that's interesting because Niebuhr is sort of the court theologian to a certain kind of like elite establishment liberalism in the 20th century.
Yeah, he was basically the chaplain for the U.S. in the Cold War.
And I think it's interesting because Niebuhr, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, I mean, like his main thing is that people are generally corruptible and evil. Like, we can't waste too much time trying to perfect people. All we can do is sort of take little bites to generally direct people in the right way, but we have to be humble in admitting the limit, our limited capacity to do good.
And the
I think
importance
that's
of institutions.
And I think that's a very seductive and attractive message when put in sort of profound and written very well. I think that's a very a seductive message for people like Comey, and the Clintons, I know, loved him as well.
He's like, it's okay. It's okay. Basically, to everybody who wants to think of themselves as a good person and be in politics, but then as soon as they start having to drastically compromise anything they ever thought of, Niebuhr is there to go, it's okay, buddy. It's okay. You're doing the best you can.
Yeah,
You're still good.
You did good, kid.
Yeah.
So the introduction begins, and he describes a scene of he's going in one of his giant black SUVs along with an aide to testify before Congress in 2017.
I bet you're wondering how I got here.
He literally says that at the end. And more than once, I found myself asking that same question. How on earth did I end up here?
God damn,
But he
man.
goes, I was thinking, he goes, I could see that worry on Brower's face, so I broke the silence. Brower is like the younger aide who's, looking nervous as they head toward Capitol Hill. How great is this? I said in a booming voice that no doubt caught the attention of the agents in the front seat. Brower looked at me. We're in the shit, I said. Now he seemed confused. Did the FBI director just say shit? Yup, I had. We're waist deep in the shit, I added with an exaggerated smile, holding my arms out to show just how deep it was. Where else would you want to be? Mangling the St. Crispin's Day speech from Shakespeare, I added, people abed in England tonight will wish they were here. The early chapters of the book, he does talk quite a bit about this thing of ours, the sanitation business in the New York area and the 5 families. And he did work pretty closely with Sammy the Bull Gravano on his turn against the Gambino family. And I just highlighted this section here as for all you fans of The Sopranos out here. Gravano describes the famous induction ceremony where you become a, quote, made guy. And he writes here, Gravano recalled that when they reached the dramatic conclusion of his ceremony, he was forced to recite those words, my soul should burn like a saint if I ever betray Cosa Nostra, while holding a flaming blood-stained tissue instead of the image of a saint. The Gambino family hadn't bothered to get enough saint pictures to burn. Gambino family, what are you doing?
That's why you're
burning
fucking
a
done
tissue.
for.
You're burning a bloody tissue instead of the saint? This is why all these guys turned on you.
Yeah.
As Phil Leotardo says, in Jersey, they do it all fucked up. There's no gun. There's no sword on the table. They're making everyone out there. So I like that little bit of color about the Gambino family.
I'm glad you brought that up because
their chintzy cheapness when it comes to making guys.
He talked about the mafia a lot, and he describes their system of ethics all the time. He talks about how they're called men of honor and how they had rules, but and that's what governed it, that they would break them, right? And he's clearly trying to make the connection and saying that the Trump was like that he wanted personal loyalty. But it's amazing that he never made the connection that he was studying an organizational structure basically a bureaucracy in the mafia, in which people had a stringent concept of ethics within the construct of a criminal organization that was doing murder and prostitution and all this awful stuff. He was never able to make the connection between that dichotomy and the fucking U.S. government that he works in. That your adherence to ethics means little if your fucking institution is designed to carry out awfulness.
Well, but they're the good guys.
But they're, yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, his concept, like everyone has this concept of the mafia that they had from like the 70s pretty much until I'd say mid 2000s, where they're like, those were the good criminals. The black gangs just kill each other, but the mafia had honor, didn't sell drugs, which of course was never fucking true.
Yeah.
But they thought that because of The Godfather, because they were against selling drugs, because that was the worst thing you could do, and they had codes. And James Comey is that, but for the U.S. government.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just amazing watching this guy who apparently does basically spend every minute of the day thrashing over the ethical implications of if he, what fucking brand of cereal he should get or when he should take a dump. Never makes the connection between what his government actually fucking does, even though he talks all the time about the FBI's failures in the past. He talks about how he makes all of his inductees read up
They have
about
to jack off
about,
to the picture of J. Edgar Hoover in pantyhose.
Yes. But he makes them all know about what they did to the Kings, and he keeps the wiretap authorization that J. Edgar Hoover got from Bobby Kennedy on his desk to remind him about that. And at no point does he make any kind of connection to, that's what the institution is for. It's always, no, those are bad people in charge. The Hoover thing, they didn't have a good understanding of what these values were. Now it's filled with good people, so it's good now. And it is really it's just magical thinking.
Well, here's maybe a little insight into how he turned into such an apple polisher, such a square. This is how he describes himself in high school. At the time, I was a high school senior and a nerd with few close friends.
No.
As if to prove it, I was home that night finishing a piece for the school's literary magazine. It was to be a brilliant satire of the cool kids, the bullies, and the suffocating peer pressure of high school. This is his intro to this is the incident that happened to him as a kid.
James Comey tried to be a school shooter, but with a reenactment musket.
This is leading up to an actually terrifying and traumatic event from his childhood where literally a real criminal called the Ramsey Rapist broke into his house when him and his younger brother were there and held them at hostage at gunpoint in a bedroom while he ransacked their house and robbed everything and held a gun to a teenage James Comey's head and his younger brother repeatedly, telling him that he was going to kill him. And then, he managed to run outside, and then, neighbors. It's a
Okay, I get him now.
Yeah,
I get why he is that now.
I guess he really pushed buttons with that brilliant satire. The guy was like, I'll show you to talk shit about the JV football team, you tall piece of
This
shit.
is a guy who was doing a string of robberies and sexual assaults all throughout New Jersey around the same time that the Summer of Sam thing was happening across the river in the Bronx in New York City. And yeah, this guy could have very easily killed him and his brother. He says, my encounter with the Ramsey Rapist brought me years of pain. I thought about him every night for at least 5 years. Not most nights, every night. And I slept with a knife at hand for far longer. The Ramsey Rapist taught me at an early age that many of the things we think are valuable have no value. Whenever I speak to people, I suggest they do a little something that might seem odd. Close your eyes, I say. Sit there and imagine that you are at the end of your life. From that vantage point, the smoke of striving for recognition and wealth is cleared.
Okay, Anton Chigurh.
I was thinking more like Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is it's a good thing to take away. It was a very significant thing that happened to him. If he didn't, again, spend decades just sending people to a concrete box because they sent the wrong AIM message.
I think, though, we have also determined that maybe trauma doesn't make you wise or thoughtful.
Moving
Except
on.
if your house catches on fire when you're a kid, and then you become the greatest writer and podcaster who ever lived.
Moving on, he talks about his early days in the Southern District of New York's attorney's office, working for hotshot Rudy Giuliani, who was the biggest celeb of the days. And he says, there was something of an unwritten code about working in the office of Rudy Giuliani, and I suppose there is in most organizations. In his case, the message was that Rudy was the star at the top, and the successes of the office flowed in his direction.
They flowed, right into the bedpan he keeps his teeth in.
I was hoping you would go there.
Yeah,
Felix.
I was just doing a little callback for everybody. One of the 12 jokes we've told on the show.
He talks about the only time that Rudy Giuliani noticed him or talked to him while he worked there was when he thought that they might be able to prosecute Al Sharpton, and he and he wanted to make sure.
what?
That's amazing.
The Sting video with the cowboy hat.
Oh, Jesus.
There's a video of Al Sharpton from the 80s where he's wearing a big, stupid cowboy hat.
He did
And
that for a little bit, though, right?
I thought it was only in this video, but he's like trying to buy coke from like an undercover informant.
Okay.
No, I think it was bribery allegations.
No, it was
or
they were
something.
investigating allegations that of embezzlement from his charity, and this is it. Like,
he did that shit.
And well, this is like the classic Al Sharpton era where he just wore like crushed velvet tracksuits and like a big gold.
When he
like,
was cool.
But also,
a big
you
medallion.
you can't start like bearing down on that kind of activity because it's just the entire New York City will fall apart.
Yeah.
He was so cool back then, though, when he was big and fat and he had the fucking tracksuit and the gold chain and the Jerry curl. Now he's like this weird beef jerky strip who's on
He
MSNBC.
lost weight.
He lost a lot of
It's
weight.
like I don't like
Yeah,
The lap
it's
band
awful.
surgery
There's no
didn't work
fun.
well for Al. But no, what
He looks like a
Giuliani,
bit strip now.
what Giuliani wanted from Comey was he wanted to make sure that if they prosecuted Al Sharpton, he said, "I want that fucking medallion." He wanted Al Sharpton's chain to like have as a trophy for
What
being
a
like.
fucking cop.
That's
Jesus Christ.
not psychosexual at all.
Giuliani.
He's a Trump lawyer now.
Well,
Yeah.
that is the incredible part coming full circle is that now he is apparently being courted to be Trump's lawyer to negotiate an end of the Mueller probe.
I don't
Good
know what that
fucking
means.
luck.
That means
Good
nothing.
Luck.
Yeah,
That means
yeah.
nothing.
I don't know.
They have
a
nothing
media
to stop
whore.
it other than firing.
No,
people.
Trump is 1 week away from just dialing up Salino and Barnes and hiring them to join his legal team.
Just a little bit more color about Comey being one of the cool kids in his high school growing up. He says here, I was not the coolest kid at my new school, Brookside Elementary in Allendale, New Jersey, something I figured out pretty quickly. My parents were always trying to save money, so my mother cut her boy's hair with her own electric clippers and dressed us in clothes she purchased at a Sears outlet. My pants were too short, and I wore white socks with heavy-soled black shoes to support the fallen arches in my huge feet. He was like Bart in that episode where he has to get correct.
Thank you, nice lady.
He has to get the corrective shoes and hair
However,
and
but
glasses.
like, I disagree with this kind of social analysis of elementary school. No one's cool in elementary school. There's only
There's still a hierarchical.
normal
You
or
never
the
met
weird
Brenda.
kid.
No,
That's it. That's it.
They're absolutely cool kids in elementary school. Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's
there
maybe
are.
a bourgeois thing, but it's like we
Okay,
had
then it
kids
must
in-
be a bougie thing.
No,
we had
there are
kids in, like,
cool kids
yeah, fifth-
in elementary
They
school.
were all the kids who lied about having sex. They were all the kids
In
who were like,
elementary?
yeah,
In ele-
yeah. All my friends like
An 11-year-old.
My friend Jacob.
How old do you think elementary school is?
No, yeah, 11. My friend Jacob was
No,
like,
that's
yeah,
sixth grade.
he was like, yeah, I got my dick sucked in a hot tub last week. I'm like, where at your
What?
parents' house, dude?
Yeah, I went all the way up in a girl's belly button last night.
yeah.
Yo.
Yo, when I come, it's over for these hoes. When I finally am able to do that biologically. No, but there were those kids. And they were.
I must just be from such a small place where there's like we can't afford to make a hierarchy here yet. Not until we're old enough to have cars and things.
Right.
I think it really may be a bourgeois thing, but yeah, we had them.
Well, this is in the context of Comey talking about his lifelong hatred of bullies and like that motivating him to get into law enforcement to fight back against the bullies and people that would use their strength to intimidate the weak. And he says of an incident with the bullies, he would say, if you don't like me and I don't like you, and then we punch each other in the head with our fists, what will that change? The reasoning approach only made him angrier. Maybe if I had let one of them pummel me, they would have moved on to another target, but I didn't have the courage to try that.
He's just trying to do logic on the bullies, and it's not working.
Use your giant hands.
Yeah,
Get them
side note,
back.
I couldn't help but looking at him on stage and mostly thinking about how he's so big that he's like a Great Dane, where they live less long because he's too big.
He's like an anvil head.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that?
That's what Donald Trump should have done. He should have just been like, we had to put James Comey down. His heart was getting too big. I tried to give him, folks. Okay,
I
very
did
very
everything I could.
very sad. I tried to give him his heart pills and peanut butter. He wouldn't do it.
Look, folks, he had a very big lunch and then he decided to jog and his stomach flipped. It happens. Okay?
I've told Jared we're gonna get a new one. He's very upset. Okay, look, it's going to be okay. Great.
What's the point of all these stories about him as a younger person? Just that he's always been disliked and insufferable?
Well, we have to know where he's coming from. He's such a simply
I think it's supposed to be
formed
tales
man.
of character building, strife. But
Faced
it's
with
weird because
adversity.
like awkward elevator conversation is thrown in with, I was held at gunpoint by a serial rapist as a child.
So he discusses his career, and then he gets to when he was working with the first Bush administration and his personal impressions of George W. Bush and the people around him. He writes, Bush could be impatient, and it drove me nuts that he started things early, but I was struck by his strong and occasionally devilish sense of humor. He then describes the devilish sense of humor about like pausing a meeting so that Bush could look out a window and watch a helicopter land and kick up snow at journalists.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's pretty funny.
It's all it's all him making fun of other people. He basically he confirms everyone's impression of George W. Bush that he's just like a frat bully shithead who needs to dominate everybody else by making fun.
However, I will say when he does get into the really strenuous sort of like bureaucratic warfare that him and Jack Goldsmith go through with the psychopaths that surround Dick Cheney, they do come across as genuinely just arrogant, bullying psychopaths in every respect.
David Addington, spoiler alert, is just a reptilian monster, as is Cheney.
Just rude, like aggressive, and like just spiteful and awful to anyone who would dare disagree with them in any respect.
Yeah.
Did Comey have a nickname?
No, he doesn't mention
Yeah.
I think that's another damning thing about his childhood. He was just a weird kid without a nickname.
No, I mean a Bush nickname.
Yeah,
Oh.
Bush.
Wow, that's sad, actually.
Bush gave a nickname to like even the second stringer NBC journalists.
Oh, totally. And like he kind of like phoned it in because he wasn't very creative, but he would be like, "Hey, guy," and like it would stick.
Yeah. Who is the guy who would sometimes stand in for Tim Russert on Meet the Press? The one who sort of looks like a gray-haired Justin Long.
David Gregory.
David Gregory.
David Gregory, who I can't even remember his name. Like Bush had a nickname for him.
It was Stretch.
Yeah, Stretch. The only person who's ever given David Gregory
I
a nickname.
cannot believe I remember that. That is
Wow.
Yeah, I'm
disgusting.
kind of shocked.
Yeah.
Imagine what you had to kick out from your childhood to
Yeah, like
remember that.
in all of age 8 through 10.
My mother's love.
Your tour of Europe in a hansom cab, wearing little crushed velvet culottes.
I want to make. I want to make. I want to make.
That's real. That's real, though.
I want to make The Matrix, but it's about Will, and he's just sitting in the chair, and they're uploading Meet the Press 2001 through 2012, and he's like, "I know everyone who's ever hosted this show. I know everyone who's ever blogged for Slate.
Whoa. Whoa.
I remember."
I know every Dear Prudie. That's closer.
Here's another gem that I this was at the time when Bob Mueller, fuck. You screwed me up. I
Yeah,
used to
he
always
says
say-
it wrong.
It does not matter.
Okay.
Yeah, who cares?
You can call him a racial slur. It's okay. It's
Mueller
loud.
used to be his boss. Of course, Mueller is like the hottest ticket in town right now. I mean, even above Comey.
Oh God,
he's still in the game.
He is the daddy dom.
He tells
of
this
the
little
resistance.
story about Mueller. So he's talking about they're in a meeting together with Bush and Cheney. He tells some joke. To my great relief, Bush laughed heartily. Cheney did not. On my way out of the Oval Office, I tugged Mueller's arm. "You're killing me," I said with a smile. "Don't ever do that to me again." "But it was funny," he replied, with the grimace that passed for a smile. Bob was not a jokester, and his severe demeanor intimidated most people. Word at the bureau was that he had knee surgery not long after 9/11 and declined anesthesia in favor of biting on a leather belt.
You know who else liked to do that? Mussolini.
Bob Mueller, according to word at the bureau, had surgery performed on his knee, biting on a leather belt.
Don't mess.
Yeah.
That is some.
That's the kind of
wild.
dedication it takes to do the Boston Marathon bombing.
Yeah. Yep.
Allegedly.
I don't believe it.
What? That he probably didn't. Yeah, that's bullshit. All those stories are like
but it
ways
is
to sound
is one of
badass.
those character
Yeah.
kind of revealing
Right,
rumors.
yeah. Like it got credence because people thought it was plausible, and that
Yeah.
tells you all you need to know about him.
Everyone has legends about themselves. Like with Mueller, it's the belt. With Gordon Liddy, it was like something so true. Something.
Oh, that was the Mr. Joshua
The
lighter
fire.
test.
Yeah, the fire, yeah.
Me, sometimes I don't buy plain Wi-Fi, and I can go 2 hours without it. Everyone has something.
Matt, do you remember any of the parts about the chapter about torture and enhanced interrogation techniques?
It's him really breaking his arm, patting himself on the back about how he and Goldsmith basically tried to fend off the insistence of guys like Addington and Cheney that they sign off on torture and mass data collection. And they still both happened.
They did, didn't they?
Well, they were never in a position where they could have actually stopped it from happening. They were supposed to sign off on allowing them, and I think they basically they put up a stink at first, and then they signed off on reform documents that had changes that they insisted on. And of course, it all ended up just being fig leaves for whatever they wanted to do in both cases. And then, Obama took the surveillance shit up into a whole new level without any of this. But they did mildly put up a stink to try to make them compromise on like the most maximal positions that they wanted to affirm when it came to the authority of the White House to authorize torture and surveillance.
And this is just the negotiation table.
Yeah, essentially what happened, or what Goldsmith tried to walk back, was immediately after 9/11, all of these, the Justice Department issued all of these decisions or whatever, giving this hugely broad power to torture and surveil and do the war on terror, that in retrospect they said were not legally or constitutionally grounded, and they tried to walk back like the worst excesses of that, even though the people who carried out these probably illegal acts were technically covered by that legal decision, even if it was rendered in a hasty or just fraudulent way.
So what you're saying is Comey is a good guy.
That's what he wants you to get across in those chapters.
Well, because he was again, I think he was faced with bad and worse options,
right.
And he chose, he acted ethically.
I mean, again, the problem is, the FBI in general, but I think the book does give a good flavor of, like, at the highest levels of these bureaucracies, there essentially only are bad and worse decisions. And the worst decision here would be letting the psychos that surround Dick Cheney have their run of it. And the compromise would be like, well, you can kind of torture people.
I think that's Comey's response to his critics also, right? It's like you kind of don't know what it's like to be in the big rooms where things are happening, faced with these kinds of decisions,
in the
right?
Big boy seat. But so he gets through these two instances in the Bush administration, the NSA surveillance program called Stellar Wind, which I think is a hilarious
stellar wind
and
comes blowing in,
and torture. And he gets to the end of these two chapters, and he writes here, in fairness to the president and our vice president, our modern culture makes this incredibly hard for leaders, especially those in government, even if they possess enough confidence to be humble. And he sort of seems to say that, like, the real shame and the problem with leadership is just there's not enough opportunity that affords them to be humble anymore. And that the sense of humility is really what's missing from leadership, and that he's trying to instill, by example and by writing this book.
He's more dedicated to sort of like Protestant mindset than any other thing.
And he isn't.
Well,
even
that's
one.
the worst
amazing.
part about Trump is that he's a showboater.
Yeah,
who flouts norms.
Comey reminds me of the conservative members of the Wehrmacht who wanted to mutiny Hitler, not because they disagreed with the Holocaust or whatever. They just, he wasn't doing it the right way.
Admiral Carnaris over here.
Tom Cruise's character in Valkyrie.
That's right.
Let's get to the stuff we all want to hear about. The Steele dossier.
Before that, I wanted to say one thing. He talks about his time under Obama. And the only character in this book that he really clearly likes a lot, because he sees in him a kindred spirit, is Obama. Obama is, in his mind, as committed to all this horse shit about honor and ethics and humbleness and being thoughtful in power as he is, and as institutional integrity as he is.
Delusional, by the way.
He loves,
Obama's a total cynic, 100%.
Well, he came away just starry-eyed, even though he says, like, I didn't vote for him, I didn't support him, but my God, the mind he clearly is the one guy he admires, who he actually writes about in this book, or the one he does most. And that really gives you a vision of Jesus. No wonder everything is so fucking mutatedly horrible. If these are the guys who have, like, the ability to stop something like Trump from happening in the short term, And if they're this sort of hobbled by their delusions on how this stuff actually works, how the hell are you going to get anything other than the worst possible outcome?
Catherine, didn't you say one of his remarks at Barnes and Noble was he was like, I worked with the George W. Bush and Obama administrations very closely, and like both of those administrations were undone by lies. George W. Bush lied about weapons of mass destruction, and Obama lied about if you could keep your doctor, and it consumed the rest of their administrations.
Right. Yeah, he equated those things. They both
Jesus
two
Christ.
presidents who told lies and then spent the rest of their presidencies,
Wow.
Dealing with the fallout.
Yeah,
of that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All because they told a lie.
Wow.
Yeah. So don't do that.
I mean, that is actually
That's some David
actually
Brooks shit right there.
surprising to me that he just comes out and says George Bush lied about weapons of mass destruction.
He's a Boy Scout.
You think the implications
window
of that.
has shifted. So
Well, you think the implications of the former director of the FBI straight up saying that a U.S. president lied us into a disastrous
I
war.
wouldn't have assumed that.
By the
I was
way-
We're all
there.
just pretending like that didn't happen. We're all just sweeping that under the rug. It's a great national shame, and it should be. It's horrifying, but like we're just going to deal with it by
Yeah.
pretending it didn't happen.
Or just being like the equivalent is Obama saying, you can keep your doctor.
Yeah.
By the way, Daddy Mueller went in front of Congress and testified that they have WMDs, so he can get killed with a fucking cattle gun too.
The idea also that people cared about Obama saying like you can keep your doctor, like most poor people don't have a regular doctor. The
Right.
idea that I have like, a familial relationship with like,
my family practitioner,
my family physician.
general
like
MD.
Obamacare was shit, but absolutely no one except like middle class kind of douchebags were extremely invested in.
old Americans were.
Well, yeah, they
irked
have
by it. Yeah.
constant relationships with their
Right.
doctors, but
Yeah, because
they already
they all-
had.
They're the only
healthcare.
people that will talk to them.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to share this story he tells about Mike Pence. This is the first time he meets the whole Trump cabinet together. He's meeting everyone, and he says, as we shook hands, the vice president-elect held the handshake an extra few seconds and said my first name, drawing it out, Jim. It struck me as an odd combination
Ominous.
of someone greeting an old friend and consoling that friend. I don't think we had ever met, although I recall our speaking on the phone once 14 years earlier. In 2003, when I was United States Attorney in Manhattan, and we were investigating a guy who registered common misspellings of popular children's websites so that when a child mistyped Disneyland.com or BobTheBuilder.com, they were directed to a pornography website.
Hell of a scam.
My reaction was, that should be a crime. When I found it out, it'd become a federal crime only months earlier. I asked for the contact information of the member of Congress responsible for the Truth in Domain Names Act so I could thank that person. It turned out to be Indiana Congressman Mike Pence, who told me on the phone that he had pushed for the law after one of his children was redirected in that sick way.
Wow.
Oh my God!
That was the one part of his initial Domain Truth and Gay Electrocution Act. That's the only part that made it through committee.
The things that are really important to him.
Yeah. I want to point out what we've lost with the firing of James Comey, because he talks a bit about his early years before he got embroiled in the whole 2016 election shenanigans, when he was actually able to try to input some sort of a long-term goal for the Bureau, what it was going to do. One of the things is he wanted to be more diverse. He thought that it was a shame that so many minorities didn't want to join the FBI just because they thought it was the man. And he wanted to do an outreach program to teach them that the FBI is not the man. The FBI is here to help. And he kind of pats himself up on the back that they've increased their diversity numbers in the FBI Academy. But that was one goal. The other one is this. I told the organization that I had one ambitious goal. The FBI would one day be the government's premier leadership factory. And private employers would count the days until an FBI leader could retire, age 50 for special agents, so they could hire them to lead. The FBI would become so good at identifying and growing leaders that all of the burdens of government leadership borne by FBI families would be repaid by successful second careers in the private sector. I told our employees that the military service was a great organization, but there was no reason why the FBI shouldn't be the dominant government supplier of America's corporate leaders.
It's a mentorship program.
That's
He's
the idea.
most fucking self-helpy guy because all of those people are so earnest and they're just like, it's all about building relationships.
He wants to basically fix all of the institutional problems in America, both in private and public sectors, by flooding them with leaders created in his leadership factory, where they all get stamped with Niebuhr and Harper Lee and all of this, and Dale Carnegie, and come out the other end ready to lead all these things well, because I guarantee you he would tell you that any problems in capitalism are the result of greedy and bad leadership. And if you just get the right people in there, maybe former FBI agents.
Would it surprise you, sir, to know that the CEO of Fleshlight is one Fox Mulder?
I have been waiting.
pretty good.
I have been waiting for a version of Ty Lopez who just flips out and shoots a Dagestani in the head and then destroys all the security footage, and then gets back to telling you to read 2 books a day that are both called like "What Color Is My Retirement?"
I'm glad.
Rich dad, poor dad, fed dad.
Rich Dad, Dead Dad. Bow bow.
I'm just glad that plan never came to fruition, and there are no substantial links between big business and the national security state.
So let's get to the what everybody really wants to talk about in this book, which is
the sex.
Trump and the sex. This is
He does love his wife, though.
He doesn't ever talk about them having sex, though.
Are there
No, that would be uncouth.
James Comey
He respects her too much.
James Comey conceived his kids by walking up to his wife, hugging her lightly, and then shaking her hand and saying, "It's been a pleasure to serve with you," and then going to the office and sending next day USPS a vial of his own semen and saying, "Do with this as you will," and including a Niebuhr quote about irresponsible use of whatever with it. And he's like, "I'm proud to say that there's actually an FBI statute that says an agent can never have sex with a woman, and I have followed it to the letter. The only man who's ever done this."
Does he have any advice for making small talk to your wife? Any how-to guides? Something like, "Hey, honey, that's a nice dress you have. It could use some honor, loyalty, and dignity, though."
Nice dress. Does it come in respectable service?
The one dialogue that I do remember, his wife tells him, at the dinner table or in bed one night at the height of the Bush administration, "Honey, don't be the torture guy." And he took that to heart.
Good advice.
To good advice.
Not trying to do anything.
Don't have our family name forever
exactly.
associated with Abu Ghraib style abuses.
The torture's going to happen. Just keep your government paycheck and not be the person associated with it.
Yeah.
I feel like women are always saying that to you.
Oh, me or the torture?
They say that to Virgil when they sit down at the date at the dinner table. They say, "Don't be the torture guy."
Oh yeah. His enhanced interrogation is asking her what she did that day. His Guantanamo, his girlfriend. He calls his girlfriend Guantanamo Bay. That's right.
Perfect. Back in the net.
Do you hear that, Mr. Trump?
You miss bottled waterboarding.
So he talks about this. Getting into it. This is where he briefs Trump on the Steele dossier, where he says, "I explained the nature of the material I was about to discuss and why I thought it important that he know about it. I then began to summarize the allegation in the dossier that he had been with prostitutes in a Moscow hotel in 2013 and the Russians had filmed the episode. I didn't mention one particular allegation in the dossier that he was having prostitutes urinate on each other on the very bed President Obama and the First Lady had once slept on as a way of soiling the bed."
To be fair, they probably replaced the mattress.
They flip the mattress.
They gotta.
You don't ever have
they're
to clean a
budget
mattress.
conscious.
That's the dumbest thing about like the P-tape thing to me the whole time. Like Trump's a stupid guy, but it's like you only get somebody if you piss in the bed before they sleep in it.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, the spirit of piss is gonna follow you now, dude. I got you.
It seems like kind of a weird black magic thing, and he's not. He doesn't strike me as a practicer of voodoo or Santeria.
Oh, I fucking hate this guy, dude. Oh, dude, I stole pants out of his house and I just shit myself in them. I fucking got you, dumbass.
So he goes,
Yeah, that's very weird.
talking to Trump about the Steele dossier. He again strongly denied the allegations, asking rhetorically, I assumed, whether he seemed like a guy who needed the service of some prostitutes.
Yes.
Look at me. Do I look like I would need to pay for sex? Just a third neck fold makes a button fly into the wall, wedge 6 feet in there, from his neck fold popping
He goes,
out.
But he also loves paying for things. Like
That's-
that's
yeah.
part of the appeal.
He plays free to play games just to do microtransactions.
He calls it making deals.
Yeah, I have made a great deal with the Fortnite Battle Pass. Okay, we have the dab emote now. Okay, really great. They were gonna ask 500 tokens for it, 450.
Folks, I got the Bubblegum Castle at Candy Crush. It was a steal.
he goes,
$300,000.
They call me. Okay, they call me the J.P. Morgan of soft tokens.
so he asks the director of the FBI if he seems like a guy who needs to pay for sex. He then began discussing cases where women had accused him of a sexual assault, a subject I had not raised. He mentioned a number of women he seemed to have memorized their allegations. As he began to grow more defensive as the conversation teetered toward disaster, on instinct, I pulled the tool from my bag. We are not investigating you, sir. That seemed to quiet him. And he goes, on the way down the hall, I passed two men in winter coats coming the other way. One looked familiar, but I kept walking. When he was past me, he called, Director Comey? And I stopped in turn. Jared Kushner introduced himself. We shook hands and I continued on my way. I would have loved it if he had said, instead of shaking hands, I extended my hand out and then immediately put it back over my head and saying, psych.
I went to shake hands with Jared Kushner, but I grabbed the mitten that was taped to his jacket.
He talks again with Trump about the Steele dossier at a different time. He said then that he had been thinking more about the part I had briefed him about privately at Trump Tower. He had been talking to people who had gone with him on the trip to Moscow for Miss Universe in 2013 pageant. He now recalled that he had not even stayed overnight in Moscow. He claimed he had flown from New York, had only gone to the hotel to change clothes, and had flown home that same night. And then he surprised me by bringing up the one allegation I specifically tried not to discuss with him. Another reason you know this isn't true, I'm a germaphobe. There's no way I would let people pee on each other around me. No way. I actually let out an audible laugh. I decided not to tell him that alleged activity did not require him to be either an overnight stay or even be in close proximity to the participants.
Also, urine is sterile. It's
No,
actually
it's
good.
Absolutely not.
It is. I heard that on television.
Yeah, it's not.
That's
This
a
is
foul-
a
They said
thing
that in
that
Fight
guys
Club.
who say, actually, the oils from your scalp wash your hair say it's
Fight
not sterile. It's a gross person thing
Exhibit
to say.
A, Fight Club.
Google it in a second.
Fight Club.
3 facts you can bring. We're talking about what do you talk about on dates. We got it. Urine is sterile. Used to be cocaine and Coca-Cola. And
Well,
that
that's
word,
true, though.
That one is true.
Yeah, and that word means ignorant person.
All right, this
2
is
out of 3.
This is a really funny part. He's now talked to Trump twice. Trump is now president, and he invites Comey to a personal private dinner with him at the White House. He contrasts this with Obama, who, when he was president-elect, he said they spent hours having long philosophical conversations. But as soon as he actually took the oath of office, he said, Jim, we won't be able to talk like this anymore. And I knew it was true because
Misconnection.
you can't have any, you can't be seen to have any kind of personal relationship if you're the director of the FBI with the president.
In his mind, it was like the end of White Fang.
Go on, get out of here, you stupid animal! Throw a rock at him and just, look sheepishly behind him.
Go get,
But James Comey just wants to love him.
go get Comey.
If you're
Get out of here.
that is like probably the worst thing that could happen to you if you're a guy like Comey. You go from talking about Plutarch with another just bloodless guy
Talking
to
about
like
pissing
Donald.
prostitutes.
Hey, you know what? I came up with the idea for the TV show Extra. I said, hey, what goes on behind the scenes?
Now I'm imagining
I
though.
picture him at the opposite ends of an extremely long table, and then there's just a giant platter of nuggies in the middle.
Can I offer you Donald Trump?
Wipeout is playing on a giant TV behind him.
Donald Trump did some stupid psychology maneuver where he's like, I'm going to keep all the dipping sauces at my side. So He wants to dip. He has to walk over. Then we'll see you so tall. Wait, what's your job again? You won a contest, right?
Okay.
I'm really sorry your son died or whatever.
There's this weird detail that I clocked as well about going to a private dinner at the White House. He talks about there are sort of stewards that they have for dinner guests who are African American men close to my age. So they have these sort of like black men as stewards for these fancy dinners at the White House. And then he mentions that the stewards all used to be like on Navy submarines. And now they're like serving chocolate cake to the president and stuff. I found it sort of weird and vaguely racist.
Well,
that the
they're
White
just
House
serving their country in a different way.
Yeah, I don't know. They're serving dinner to the president now.
Yeah.
I like the idea
Yeah.
that in order to bring out the final giant chocolate cake to our big wet president, they have to both take keys off their neck, put it in two different things, look at each other, and turn it at the same time.
Trump has a nuclear football, but it's just filled with Jolly Ranchers.
So
He's like, this, in case of a nuclear war, I can sustain myself for an entire afternoon. I picked out all the cherry ones.
So here is a classic bit of Trump dumb guy shit. This is really funny. He says, on my plate, I had found a large cream-colored card describing the entire 4-course menu in cursive script. Salad, shrimp scampi, chicken parmesan with pasta, and vanilla ice cream. I love that's a real big boy meal.
All in one bowl. I call it the European medley.
I just got a Vitamix. It's the most expensive blender.
You know, Stav says that he got his first. Actually, I was before Nick.
The president began by admiring his own menu card, which he held up. They write these things out one at a time, by hand, he marveled, referring to the White House staff. A calligrapher, I replied, nodding. He looked quizzical. They write them by hand, he repeated.
Also, thanks for saying calligrapher. That was also necessary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand that. You're trying to figure out anything to talk about this oath with.
Yeah, but you are also that guy who's
Well, you're
like,
also
I know
that
the word
guy.
for that.
Yeah. I know the word.
I mean, to wrap it up, I mean, this dinner with him and Trump really is sort of the climax of the book. This is what we've all been waiting for.
Because they both came.
This is what we're all been waiting for. This is what he really realizes, like, hey, this isn't going to work out. This guy's crazy. He goes, for the rest of the meal, pausing only now and then to eat, he spoke in torrents, gushing words about the size of his inauguration crowd, how much free media coverage he had been able to generate during the election, the viciousness of the campaign. He offered his view of the Clinton email investigation, referring to it in 3 phases, each of which, in his telling, bore my name. In Comey 1, he said, I saved her. In Comey 2, I did what I had to do. In Comey 3, which was my final letter to Congress, closing the case for a second time, he said, I saved Hillary again, but she totally misplayed that.
Comey.
And then he goes, then there were the baffling, unnecessary lies. At one point, for example, the president told me that Chief of Staff Reince Priebus didn't know we were meeting, which seemed incredible. A chief of staff should know when the president is dining alone with the FBI director. Then, later on in that same dinner, Trump said casually, Reince knows we're meeting. Again, I don't think these are lies. I just think his brain is misfiring.
Yeah. Although that does sound something like something G-Dub would do. Like, we're going to spring a meeting on him.
Yeah.
It's going to be so funny.
And then he goes, unprompted, and in another zag in the conversation, he brought up what he called the golden showers thing, repeating much of what he had said to me previously.
Is this during dinner?
Yeah, this is during dinner.
They were drinking lemonade.
Adding that it bothered him. There was even a 1% chance his wife, Melania, thought it was true. That distracted me slightly.
I love that he thinks Melania is stupider than him. Like, that woman, I mean, look, no fucking quarter for, like, the bedwarmers of dictators, but she's clearly smarter than him.
I think he assumes she doesn't speak English.
I think she's probably so mad that he isn't dead yet. Because, like, she must have seen him eat once and been like,
Yeah.
yep.
No.
By the
I
way,
just got to wait this out 6
She
months.
pulled out an actuarial chart after their first date, and she was like, "This is going to be cake," and then he just keeps fucking living.
By the way, speaking of Melania and Donald, how fucking funny is it that Melania went to Barbara Bush's funeral by herself, and he was like tweeting and playing golf, and he goes, about to watch the memorial service on the television. Beautiful. Beautiful
They did not want
fucking
him
rules.
there. He did not want him there, though.
Of course not.
Yeah,
The Bush
yeah.
family hates him.
Yeah.
Also, like, that was probably Barbara Bush's dying words. Don't let that man show up.
Yeah.
It's gonna be. I mean,
Oh, no.
Did you?
I'll come back and haunt all of you, Jeb, just like I haunted you my whole life while I was alive.
he is.
She hates her children so much.
He is though. He is gonna go to John McCain's funeral, and that is gonna
Oh,
be
yeah.
the
Oh,
funniest.
he's gonna
shit.
piss on
Yeah.
his grave.
Well, John. Looks like you couldn't get out of this one.
I like the veterans who are still alive.
Did you see that New York Times story? There was reporting that Michael Cohen waltzed up to Melania at Mar-a-Lago to apologize for the Stormy Daniels payment.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah, it
I'm
was
sorry.
actually. You've got to read the story. It was like insanely pathetic about like Donald Trump has hated Michael Cohen for like their entire professional career, even though this guy is like going to go to prison for his boss.
Amazing.
I highly recommend.
I'm
it
so
reading.
sorry that I took out an equity line to pay this woman for no reason. I'm very sorry that
with
that
my
happened.
own money.
With
But
my own money.
I
for
love it. Like
no
that's how
reason at all.
psychotically dedicated Michael Cohen is to Trump. He's like, "Don't worry, boss.
I got
I'll
this."
handle this with the wife. I'll say exactly the right thing. I know what to say to Karen. You get back, it'll be beautiful."
That's like Himmler. Himmler was like that. Hitler hated him and wouldn't like have meetings with him, so he would talk to a portrait of Hitler in his office.
Jesus
Fun
Christ.
fact for everyone.
A little bit of a Hitler 101 for this episode.
Man, that Himmler guy sounds fucking weird.
Buddy, don't get me started.
I don't know if I trust that guy.
Back to the golden showers dinner that changed history. He says it bothers him that if there's even a 1% chance that Melania thought it was true. Comey says, that distracted me slightly because I immediately began wondering why his wife would think there was any chance, even a small one, that he had been with prostitutes urinating on each other in Moscow.
Oh, my God. Both of these men are so naive. Like, Melania, complicit, definitely going to the guillotine as well. But she's not such a moron that she didn't immediately go, yeah, probably.
Well, he says, for all my flaws, there is a 0% chance, literally absolute zero, that Patrice would credit an allegation that I was with hookers peeing on each other in Moscow. If you took out any one of those details, like I was just with hookers in Moscow, she might believe it. Or with hookers pissing on each other in Pittsburgh. Yeah, got it. But all three, the concatenation of all three of those, incredible. She would laugh at the very suggestion. In what kind of marriage to what kind of man does a spouse conclude there is only a 99% chance her husband didn't do that?
These are not people of honor.
No, these are not men of honor. The real men of honor, of course, are the Sicilian mafia guys that he does sort of look up to in the early chapters of the book.
Because there are rules. He
you know
loves
who-
rules.
You know who wouldn't cheat on their wives? Those guys.
Something else occurred to me about President Trump at that dinner that I found very instructive. I don't recall, this is true. Actually, this is like one insight in the book that I actually made me pause. I don't recall seeing him laugh ever. Not during small talk before meetings, not in a conversation, not even here during an ostensibly relaxed dinner. Months later, the thought of a man whom I had never seen laugh stayed with me. I wondered if maybe others had noticed it, or if in the thousands of hours of video coverage he had ever laughed. He had spent literally decades in front of video cameras, being between his highly choreographed career as a business mogul and his years as a reality television star. So out of curiosity, I Googled it and looked through YouTube videos. So he literally starts going down a YouTube rabbit hole, searching Trump laughter.
I even played my favorite Fibber McGee and Molly skits for him. Didn't even crack a smirk.
But I thought that was a telling observation. I remember
Yeah, it
I've
kind
maybe
of
had a
is.
Oh yeah, no, he's a
thought.
psycho. He's a psycho,
Yeah,
and it's like
he's a dead-eyed, yeah.
But like Bush was kind of a psycho. Bush, I guess maybe-
But Bush would snicker.
yeah, he
different
Bush,
type of psycho.
Bush was
Yeah.
always laughing. Like
different type of
I-
psycho. Like
Trump, I kind of can only remember him like hissing,
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that
like a kind of.
the big thing it points to is the difference between the psycho that he is and the psycho that Bush is that he's miserable. He's a miserable person.
Yeah.
Like every day is agony. He's just got this deep
He doesn't experience happiness.
No
just fleeting,
happiness.
impulsive sense of joy.
Yeah,
He's also terminally unable to laugh at himself. Like,
well, that's
did you
because
ever
of his
watch like the
crippling
roast or
insecurity.
like him
Yeah.
at the correspondence dinner?
Well, the
like,
one they did a Comedy Central roast of him, which is still blows my mind that he allowed them to do that.
Excruciating.
Just because he
he
got
just
to
kind
be
of like
on TV.
stretches his mouth
Yeah.
and like moves his head, but it's not laughter.
No. Well,
He
it's
has,
just
like,
too insecure.
A sort of like broad grin and nod of his waddle is like the closest thing that.
Yeah.
I have this sounds like something James Comey would say, kind of, but my friend said something about, my friend, a long and storied troll, said something about having a sense of humor and being able to deliver comedy a little while ago that sort of stuck with me, where he said, being funny it's a gift you can have that can make people who probably shouldn't like you understand you in a way and grow to like you. And I think for somebody like Trump, he fundamentally doesn't understand.
Doesn't have that motivation.
Right,
He's never tried to charm anyone.
He doesn't understand people beyond transactions, so he can't give anyone that gift of understanding them or truly liking them in any way.
Instead of us, normal people who make jokes all the time so that people don't hate us.
Exactly. But that's my very James Comey explanation, but I think it's true.
Just the one last thing I have here from the dinner. This is sort of the crux of it. He returned again to the issue of loyalty, saying, "I need loyalty." I paused again. "You will always get honesty from me," I said. He paused. "That's what I want. Honest loyalty," he said. This appeared to satisfy him as some sort of deal in which we were both winners.
I've done it again.
Yes, honest loyalty. That and the yes, handwritten, I think are just incredibly funny. Matt, do you have any other observations or selections from the book?
I think I got everything I wanted to talk about.
All right.
I really wish that the FBI could have been the Leadership Academy, though. That's a real bummer. I really wish I could have a bunch of ex-cop bosses. That's a real bummer that can't happen.
Well, they'll all be ex-cop Democratic politicians if 2018 goes the way we're all hoping. So just to close things out here, I think let's do one final reading from Higher Loyalty by James Comey, but as read by Felix Biederman.
All right. This is the only chapter of the book I read. Chapter 39, The Temerity of Dishonor. On March 2nd, I put on my black leather bass rubber soles. They were an experienced shoe and had seen mobile command centers, award ceremonies, and court settlements for greedy families that did not seem to understand that when a federal law enforcement officer points an M209 grenade launcher at them to request that they surrender their pirated copies of Jason Derulo songs, they oblige. These shoes commanded respect, but their modest bottoms meant a silent journey for the feet of their owner. It was my favorite type of apparel. A self-contained stoic of old who does not need to brag by echoing loud clacks on floors, much less those hollowed halls of 1600 Penn. Little did my brave little pedal protectors know that they were about to meet their opposite, a braggadocious lout who had none of their qualities, President Donald Trump. "Hey, Director Dumbass, how are we doing today?" Other presidents would refer to me by my name, not this one. "Vanitas vanitatum omnia vanitas," I responded stoically. This was the motto of the FBI's Pakistani 11-year-old monitoring division. "Hey, I should get Jared in here. Say, hey, Jared, I think you got another guy doing his, bar mitzvah in here? Really great. Didn't know there were you people in the FBI. Takes all kinds here, really good." The pompous commander-in-chief responded ignorantly. I have the utmost respect for the Jewish people, by the way. "Mr. President, what is the purpose that you have convened this pleasurable tete-a-tete?" I asked. "Gina Gershon was and still is one of the absolutely most splendid-looking women you can find on a map, and it remains true and true to be seen. I could have had her in 93, and I invented the idea for the Empire carpet jingle." If previous chief executives dispensed wisdom buttressing their points that I often respectfully disagreed with, this was a man who offered boasts in their stead. I could feel the brave souls of the men of Ruby Ridge crying out in anguish. "That is incredible, sir," I responded. "Oh, yeah, no, yeah, right. So I have a question. say you committed a crime, but when you committed the crime, you got the things now where you put some stuff in a vial and they tell you, oh, you're Scottish, you're Irish, really great. Now, when you committed the crime, you think, oh, I'm German, but it really doesn't count, right? It can't. You think you're a different person when you do it. I mean, they've done cases on this. My memory flashed to 1972 when I was enduring the privileged crucible of the Eagle Scouts. I was mastering the slip knot when it occurred to me, one cannot tell the truth while also lying. Something was afoot. All right, time's up, Director Homo. See you later. Great, really good. And that's amazing.
That is
really good by Director Comey.
Wow.
Yeah.
James Comey, a higher honor.
Patriot.
The Chapo book report. I think we can close the cover on that.
Until next year when we do the sequel, good grief, even more loyalty and honor.
We can.
I can't wait till Jared Kushner writes this book, and he's like, I had always taken the position of being the president's son-in-law very seriously.
I considered it a privilege and an honor to be the special good boy.
Oh, God, I can't wait.
He replaced me with Anthony Weiner for some reason. He pardoned him and then made him marry his daughter.
I can't wait for him to go to jail and come out born again like Chuck Colson.
Yes.
Oh, Jared, please write your book so we can review it on the show. We can't wait. So yeah, that about wraps it up for this week. But before we go, anyone, you'll never guess who dropped by, folks. Anyone can drop by Chapo Trap House. It's old friend Brendan James back again.
Hi. There's 30 seconds left. What?
You got anything you want to plug, Brendan?
No, I can't think of anything that's coming out in August that might be a collaborative effort among members of the show that is both funny, a little bit educational, a little edgy, but on bookshelves at all fine bookstores. If there were to be something like that, it would probably be called The Chapo Guide to Revolution, a manifesto against logic, facts, and reason. I am a co-author, as are several of the people you've heard today. So August 21st.
August 21st.
But better than that, buy it now, folks. Go on your favorite indie, ChapoTraphouse.com. Yeah, go to ChapoTraphouse.com. Buy it now. Get some extra goodies, maybe, or just feel good about it. And we'll be seeing you on the road to promote it as well in the
as
summer.
we run laps around that boring asshole James Comey and his book.
Yeah, folks. I mean, he didn't say it, but Brendan really needs this. He quit the show to do devil sticks in the subway stations, and it's not really much of it's not a lot of money, so he really needs these residuals.
I'm actually, that's a funny joke, but I'm actually touring right now. I am the keyboardist for the band How to Destroy Angels, which is my new band, and if anyone wants to come see me play, that would also be great. Tickets are $500, and I look forward to seeing everybody on the road.
Oh man, fucking devil sticks get me every time.
They're the greatest thing ever invented.
So that about does it for this week. And thanks again to Catherine Krieger of Splinter for joining us and sharing your
always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
your Comey observations. So till next time, guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.